What is the most important component of a factory? What is the most unpredictable component of a factory? What is the most wet component of a factory? That's right, fluids. More precisely, non-solids. Fluid is the first item that you collect in Factorio, in every game, on every planet. But do you really understand how they work? Have there been times where oil just doesn't mix with water? This video will exhibit all exotic behaviors of fluids in Factorio that could ruin your life. Please download the handout available at the link in the description, as you will be asked to fill them in throughout this video. Did you know there are in total 5 types of fluids in Factorio? You might be able to guess 2 of the most common ones. 1. Various colors of water. 2. Various colors of clouds. Of course, these are not all. 3. Various arrangement of colored balls. 4. Lava in a bucket. 5. Plasma. Write these down so that you will never forget. Experiment 1.1. We set up a lake pump that adds water to a tank if the tank is below 50%. We let a land pump send the content of this tank somewhere else. The lake pump is capable of extracting 1200 water per second, and the land pump may also theoretically send 1200 FPS. In the imperial system, one would also say UPS. Observe how much water the land pump sends in practice and note it down. Experiment 1.2. Suppose instead the upper threshold is set to 10% instead of 50%. Note that 10% of a liquid tank is 2500 fluids, so it should still be able to support the pump, which theoretically pumps 1200 fluids per second. Now how much fluid does the pump really send out? Write down your observations. Terminology. Given the pump sending fluid from system A to system B, we say the pump has sufficient input pressure if the fluid level of system A is higher than 20%. We say that the pump has sufficient output pressure if the fluid level of system B is lower than 80%. We say the pump has insufficient input, respectively output, pressure if it does not have sufficient input, respectively output pressure. If a pump has both sufficient input and output pressure, we observe that it can indeed send fluids at its top speed of 1200 per second. Otherwise, if either pressure is insufficient, then the pump can only work at a lower efficiency. In any situation where you need to reserve space for byproduct by setting an upper limit or storing up a buffer while avoiding the access beyond a lower limit, you need to keep in mind the fluid pressures, or your pumps could be the biggest bottleneck of your factory. This is why pressure checking is the top priority of your Factorio initialization safety checklist. Experiment 2. Sometimes machines may take fluids as an input. The sockets of machines separates the input system and the internal storage system of the machine. Compare this to how a pump may split a system into 3 separate systems: input, output, and the pump's internal system. In fact, the sockets of machines act like tiny invisible pumps, and its fluid transfer speed is subject to the pressure of the 2 systems it separates, just like the pumps. You may even notice that a pump is in fact a machine comprised of 2 sockets, which we view as 2 smaller sub-pumps. But those 2 sub-pumps inside the pump are not subject to any pressure of the pump's internal storage. What? We also remarked that the internal behavior of fusion reactors is a mystery. You might notice that some buildings have double sockets. When 2 double sockets of 2 machines kiss, they no longer act as pumps. Instead, the 2 kissing machines will share their internal fluid systems, and the fluid level among all kissing machines will be equalized. Exercise 2.1. We view each of the 2 sub-pumps of a pump to be further comprised of 2 sub-sub-pumps, and suppose those 2 pumps are subject to the pressure of their internal storage. It is known that when pumping, The pump will store 60 fluids out of its 400 fluid storage limit. In this case, what is the pumping speed of each sub-pump? Experiment 3.1. Does pressure work on fluid wagons? What is your guess? That's right. The answer is yes and no. When pumping from a tank into a wagon, the pump cares about the level of the tank but not the wagon. Meaning even if the wagon is almost full, the pump will still be able to pump at the top speed as long as the input pressure in the tank is sufficient. And vice versa. Keep in mind that it is impossible to pump directly from one wagon to another wagon, but you may always work around this by using two pumps. Experiment 3.2. Have you ever tried to unload a fluid wagon? What is the fastest way to unload a fluid wagon? If you attempted to unload a fluid wagon with 12 pumps, raise your hand and keep watching. Each fluid wagon can only accept 3 pumps at a time. Look closely at the wagon. What do you see? That's right. A fluid wagon is comprised of 3 smaller fluid wagons. Each small wagon can only accept 1 pump. Therefore, no matter input or output, the throughput of a fluid wagon is limited to that of 3 pumps, up to a factor of quality. You now have the permission to mock any student who has raised their hand of using 12 pumps. The fluid system in Factorio did not used to work in the way shown above. From the ruins of the British Library, we recovered documents regarding the old fluid system in some previous versions of Factorio. This provides sufficient evidence for the crimes committed by Factorio developers onto their users. We believe the program you are watching right now will provide insights to the people in the future about the crimes still committed up to this day. Experiment 4.1. Consider a fluid system consisting of 5 consecutive pipes, each containing 20 water, so a total of 100 water. Let us deconstruct the middle pipe and observe what happens. Each of the 4 remaining pipes now contains 25 water, and the total is still 100 water. We did not lose any water when deconstructing the middle pipe, and the 20 water that used to be in the middle pipe now has been distributed to the remaining pipes evenly, meaning that 10 of them are pushed to the left side system, and 10 of them are pushed to the right side system. However, if the removed entity is the last entity of the system, or the remaining entity do not have enough storage to handle the overflow due to the removal, then the excess fluid will be deleted. Further, it is worth noting that systems separated by pumps are treated as distinct systems that do not follow this principle unless the removed entity itself is the pump, in which case the excess will be first pushed to the output system of the pump and then to the input system only when the output is full. If you are confused with all the explanations, do not worry. There is one item that would save us from the madness of the fluid. We will reveal this item after the next exercise. Exercise 4.3. Based on the above observation, we construct the following fluid deletion system to delete excess useless liquid. We input the fluid into a machine using a pump, then repeatedly reset its recipe. Since pumps act as valves that split fluid systems, when recipes get reset, the fluid in the machine will have nowhere to go, and therefore be deleted. Note that without the pump, the fluid would simply return to the input system. Now can you compute the rate of deletion of this system using the signal analysis table you have learned from the last class? Example 5. Barrels. Barrel is the least used item in Factorio. On an average playthrough of Factorio, about 0 barrels are crafted up to the end of the game. However, note that a barrel may be used to store up to 50 liquids. This means a fully stacked ring belt may transfer 240 times 50, which is 12,000 fluid per second, which is equivalent to 10 pumps, or 4 legendary pumps. This completely solves the issue with pipe distance limit and throughput issues due to pressure. A legendary stack inserter may transfer 120 times 50 equal to 6,000 fluids per second from chest to chest, equivalent to 2 legendary pumps. Unloading a wagon with 12 such inserters will be equivalent to unloading 8 fluid wagons with pumps. This completely solves the throughput problem with unloading fluid wagons. Write down these numbers in your handout. The process of setting up the infrastructure of a loop of full and empty barrels is extremely easy. We refer the viewers to the 32-minute tutorial shown on the screen. If you ever thought barrels were useless, prepare for execution. This concludes today's program. Finish writing your handout and submit them to your teacher. Next time, we will talk about the fluid dynamics within a pump and eventually build our own aircraft carrier in Factorio.